Atanu Pramanic. He's Joint President and Chief Information Officer at HINDALCO, an Aditya Birla Group company. Mr. Pramanic has previously worked at Larsen & Toubro Constructions, Petrofac, and Genpact. He has managed multi-million-dollar complex and multi-location IT program delivery and operations. Good morning to you, Mr. Pramanic. I'll hand it over to you for your presentation.
Good morning, Anisha, and good morning, everyone. Thanks for giving me the opportunity. Just let me share my screen. Give me a moment. So is it visible, Anisha?
Yes, we can see your screen. You can go full screen and please go ahead with the presentation.
Right. Okay, so as Anisha has mentioned, I am going to take you through our case study, how we looked at cloud migration and what we did to do that and what kind of situation that we went through. So probably I have not made a presentation to take you through, but I'll speak it through, okay? What's the background? Why, I mean, normally what we do for any situation, at least in the corporate world, we get into a situation of 5W and H, 1H, right? So why, when, what, where, who, how? Cloud is not a new topic in the IT industry. It is there for a few years, but in the last 2 years and more than anything else during the pandemic, the cloud adoption, all of us in the industry have seen, has improved, has gone up in terms of percentage, right? We in the manufacturing organizations have also started using cloud more than ever, specifically in the pandemic, but as an overall solution as well. I would say pandemic has only pushed the case. So why would we do cloud? When should we do it? Where? Who should we do it? How should we do it? I'll just get into the details of it in the subsequent points. We all know, right? In today's world, there is hybrid cloud, there is multi-cloud. Within that also the positioning of the usage, specifically from the applications perspective. Do we use it from SaaS perspective, that is a software as a service perspective? Do we use cloud only as a platform? Or do we use it kind of end-to-end, everything that you do by yourself specifically is infrastructure as a service? The basic difference, I would expect most of us in the call would know, but just to reiterate, if I go into a SaaS model, software as a service, I as a customer would expect that I would only give my requirements and it will be configured into the solution by the service provider, by the OEM, by the tool owner. And I just have to use it, log in and use it. Everything else will be managed by the SaaS provider, software as a service provider, right? Move to PaaS. PaaS is a bit more, as an end user, I have a bit more responsibility, right? The cloud provider will give me the platform. They will manage the core platform, the security and few things around it. But the software, its usage, its solution, everything is on me, right? And now move into IaaS, infrastructure as a service. The responsibility increases on me as an end user, right? A few more things comes onto me and the cloud provider only gives me a blank space, right? And going on to the hybrid and the multi-cloud strategy as well. As an organization, I think today, there are a few very new cloud native organizations that have come up, some startups. Even I was kind of talking to a bank in I think Southeast Asia, who have started as a cloud native bank, full-fledged transaction banking. So all these are happening. But I think from the perspective that where we already have a legacy, most of us, and more so in our organization, we are in a hybrid situation and we are in a multi-cloud situation as well. So that means that we have presence on premise. We have also presence in more than one cloud providers, right? So that's the kind of what part of it and kind of where part of it, that we are in hybrid, we are in multi, we use SaaS, we use PaaS, we use IaaS. And I think most of us in this space will be kind of utilizing all of these today, right? Now the point comes the way we are doing within our organization, right? We being a legacy organization, many and most of the applications were developed for on-premise. It was hosted on a physical server. A few of them were virtualized, and that's about it. All the management, including the data center and the servers and the OS and the security and the applications, everything was in-house. Now, when we started thinking of cloud, maybe 2.5, 3 years back, gradually, and as I mentioned in the beginning, the movement was a bit slower in I would say 18, 19, 19, 20 compared to 2021. But the principle of what would move to cloud and what would stay on premise has not changed much, I would say. And what do I mean by that? The applications in our environment, we are in a kind of a hub and spoke scenario. There is a kind of a central organization. You can say that as a corporate IT or a group IT, whatever you call it. And there are plant locations and offices and factories and mines and all those what we have. Those are local presence along with the shop floor, along with the actual work that gets done, right? So we have kind of a hub and spoke situation. Some of these applications are central to the organization. Single application takes care of the whole organization as a functionality, as a feature. Some of these applications are very location specific. Within those, some of the applications are very data hungry, right? Let's say I'll give an example of, let's say, weighbridge. We have weighbridges, we have gate entry systems, we have attendance systems at the plants and the locations, right? Those are data hungry in the sense they need to be always in sync. So how do we manage those applications? Are they candidates to move on to cloud? Vis-a-vis, let's say some month-end applications. Let's say some applications which require transactions to be onboarded and kind of the data running to give my output once in a day or once in a week, or even some of those are once in a month, monthly closure activities, right? There are certain point tools which are pan organization, but they are not data hungry, right? So in terms of application categorization, even then comes onto the ERP, enterprise resource planning package. So which of these applications are integrated with ERP? So my ERP won't run if the data from the point tool is in sync. So if my ERP is on cloud, I will have to have one strategy. If my ERP is on premise, I'll have to have another strategy from the perspective that which applications can be moved to the cloud, which applications can stay near to the ERP. Now within ERP, in our organization, we are going to have a kind of a hybrid scenario. right? Some of the bolt-ons, quote unquote, some of the modules, quote unquote, are there on the cloud. Now, that also has an impact on my application strategy, which is a candidate to be moved to the cloud and which needs to remain closer to the bigger application, which is my transaction processing application, which is the ERP, right? So in a cloud usage scenario, application categorization and that roadmap, that strategy needs to be very clear, which we have a very defined, I would say, affinity matrix, which will tell me that there are 7 or 8 parameters that we have defined. And for each and every application, we fill up those parameters, and it automatically tells me that if my mother application is on-premise, this application needs to be on-premise because it is data hungry and so on and so forth. The other output of that affinity matrix would give me, okay, fine, this is not data hungry, this need not be in sync, it can be accessed from anywhere, or rather it needs to be accessed from anywhere. The other perspective of pushing onto cloud is also that what you need to access within the network of your organization and what you can access it over the internet through a public facing IP. That's another angle of categorizing my applications. That also will tell that what application is a cloud candidate, right? You can always put an intranet, create a intranet is an extension of your own LAN or WAN network onto the cloud as well. But that also defines where and how your application needs to be accessed. What is your access policy? What is your access requirement? Where will be your users? Let's say it's a marketing software, sales software, and your sales folks are on the ground, traveling, moving every day. Would you like to push that application onto the cloud? Would you like to put it under wrap into your corporate network so that they need VPN to connect back into your corporate network? Or can you put that application under a public IP so that everyone can access over an internet, wherever they are, through dongle, through mobile, through anything, right? With the proper security, obviously. Security portion is a definite context while we are talking of cloud today. The moment you talk of categorizing your applications, the immediate next context comes is how do you move them to cloud, if at all they are cloud candidates. So I'm just concentrating on my transformation part of it, right? That I have a handful of legacy applications. What all do I need to consider if I need to move them to cloud? So we spoke about our availability of the opportunities in terms of hybrid, in terms of multi-cloud, in terms of SaaS, PaaS, IaaS. Then we did the categorization of our applications. And then once you categorize the applications, let's say I have an application where my OS is a Linux. I have an application where I have written it on IBM AIX. Now, if I need to move into any of the public clouds, be it AWS or Azure or Google or Oracle, whichever be it, will I be able to just lift and shift? Or do I need to re-platform? Does it require, while I'm re-platforming, does it require a BPR, a business process reengineering, and I kind of totally revamp my application? Or I just re-platform from the OS perspective and move that application onto cloud, right? So that's another angle when you categorize your applications in terms of affinity. The re-platforming considerations are also a very important part of the discussion, very important part of the decision making. If your re-platformization requires more than, I would say, effort than just lift and shift of the application from on-premise to cloud, probably will drop it if that application is good to be kind of continued on premise, right? So that's a very important portion of your cloud decision making, cloud migration, the replatformization consideration. Another angle that we have thought through, again from the cloud migration perspective, not so much as for the latest organizations, startups who are cloud native or cloud first, right? For us also, we have taken a strategy that it will be a cloud first for newer applications where my affinity matrix tells that there is no limitation of putting it on the cloud and you need not consider only on premise. In that case, we have already gone into a strategy of cloud first. But being again a kind of a legacy organization, the perspective comes from the licensing perspective as well. BYOL, I think this is a pretty known industry term, bring your own license. Now today, most of the public cloud organizations are providing or allowing you to pull the license from their marketplace. You do not need to buy a separate license and install there. But again, in case you have already the license on premise and your license provider allows you to use it on cloud so that you can protect your current IT investment, that's another angle that you need to understand and kind of take a decision appropriately, that you already have invested in a, let's say, a perpetual license. Better make it BYOL, use it on the cloud so that you can save on the licensing portion on the cloud when you move your legacy application onto the cloud, right? So that's a very important part of your decision making, of your strategy. Then comes the overall costing, the formats and the formulae, right? The point here is when we are talking of multi-cloud, the public cloud providers today have multiple costing formats and formulae. You need to be aware of all those, at least for the top 3 or 4. You need to understand that if you need a space immediately for a POC, proof of concept, for next 3 months, which is your go-to partner? Vis-a-vis, if you need to have a 3-year strategy or a 5-year strategy, a long-term strategy, which is going to be your partner? Or in case you have a very immediate and urgent unplanned requirement, where do you go to have the best pricing, to have the best, I would say, opportunity to utilize a cloud space? So the understanding of the pricing or the costing formats and formulae from the top 3 or 4 cloud service providers is also very important to decide on your cloud migration. So we again have kind of internalized these after talking to all the 3 or 4 big partners. And today we are in a position that given those situations, that whether it is a short-term requirement, whether it is a long-term requirement, whether it is a kind of an unplanned urgent requirement, we just put it in our parameters sheet and I can get into the costing which is favorable to us, and that's the answer, right? So another angle in this also comes more often than not, that how do you split, let's say, any important application needs to have a dev instance, a development instance, needs to have a testing instance, needs to have a production instance, and you might need to have a few more, like a DR instance, or within the testing you might need to have a UAT, SIT, FUT, multiple instances, right? So can you distribute this strategy across your on-premise available infrastructure and the cloud infrastructure? Yes, definitely yes. So we have done that as well, that if I have available infrastructure on premise, I can't throw it out, right? I have to also protect my IT investment. So how do I strategize to utilize my current IT investment, even though I have a cloud strategy in place? So we also are segregating between the development instance, testing instance, and the production instance, and also the DR instance. Where do I put it? Is it on cloud? Is it on premise? Again, are we doing a hybrid model there? So that also is a decision point for cloud migration in today's world, right? So what we have covered is basically what all is there at our disposal: the hybrid cloud, multi-cloud, SaaS, IaaS, PaaS. We have done then the categorization of the applications. We have looked at the licensing part of it. We have looked at the costing formats and the available opportunities part of it, right? Now let's look at a couple of other things as the overall management. I will take another 2-3 minutes, and then probably I'll kind of open up for any questions that anyone might have. So in my mind, overall management of today's cloud in a hybrid and a multi-cloud scenario is not so easy. And someone needs to understand the nuisances of cloud usage. There is always a tussle between cloud provider coming and telling you, sir, aapka TCO kam ho gaya. And when I present it to my internal management, it doesn't come out always like that, my dear friends, right? So there is a balance between what do you define your TCO as, right? Total cost of ownership. And within cloud scenario, something that what we are seeing is the cost creeping. It's a very fine aspect of it, that when you have provisioned an instance, you have provisioned for a specific data movement, you have provisioned for a number of kind of transaction movements, IOs or whatever you call it, and you have also provisioned for specific volume. You have also provisioned for some specific cores, CPU, GPU, whatever you call it in different partner terms. But the moment your application grows, or one day you get a request from the team, I need one more instance to test it out. I need one more instance to do a pre-prod cloning. I need one more instance to kind of integrate a third-party tool. Gradually and very quietly, your overall usage creeps up. And at the end of the month or the quarter, when you get the bill, it tends to overshoot your plan. It tends to overshoot your initial investment approval. So that's another thing that we are kind of managing internally, is the overall cloud usage management. While you have tremendous flexibility, like say something that you have done for a POC and the decision is not taken, so you can just put it down as a dormant instance, so your usage outgo is minimized. You keep that as a dormant instance, it is not an up and running instance, and your costing for that portion is minimized. In a couple of months, when you have management approval or decision made, you can again bring it up and then move it to production and move ahead with that, right? So those flexibilities are there, but you have to understand that. On one side, the on-premise investment, while they tend to be fixed, either you buy what you require right now, or you buy putting some 20% contingency or buy a over slightly higher size of your IT assets. Or you don't plan, you just buy what you require now, and then you fall into a trap when you want to, or when you have to expand your requirements. That is where cloud comes into your rescue. So you have to properly judge where cloud brings in benefit to you in terms of operations management, cost management, security management, access, or the time that it takes to transfer data if it's a data hungry application. your response management. You very happily can install an application on cloud, but more often than not, in our context, in our organization, our plants, our mines are not in the metro cities, right? They cannot be. So in those places, what is your availability of the security, of the network availability? In some of the places, I don't even have it. I had to beg to the ISP providers, and we laid some 30-40 kilometers of fiber to get that connectivity to our plant, right? So when you have those situations, how can cloud help you? You have no other choice other than going back to your local on-premise infrastructure, right? So overall, I would say while cloud is the way to go, while all of us are moving towards that, but these finer points, right, probably we have kind of experienced, and I just wanted to share with everyone on the call today. So I think that's all that I have to present today, and thanks for listening me patiently. If you have time, Anisha, I can take a few questions.
Thank you so much for your case study presentation, Ms. Pramanic. I'm looking at this point of time on the platform. We haven't seen any questions which have come in. If there are any questions, we'll send them across to you. Perhaps if you have the time, you can just shoot off an email as a reply to these questions. We thank you for joining us today.